Hello, everyone, and welcome to another VantagePoint AI session here on our live stream. So glad to have everyone joining us today. I know today is going to be a great session because I have heard from many of our VantagePoint family members that this is a very big conversation happening right now, as well as just, anyone who's looking at the markets understands that navigating around through some of the fundamentals and the trade strategies and the trade wars right now is incredibly important. So let's just get a few kind of housekeeping items out of the way here really quickly. If you guys don't mind just giving me a quick sound check. I believe everybody can hear me. And also don't forget to chat with me during the session. These sessions are great when we can go live into analysis on things that you guys want to review here within the VantagePoint software. So whether you're a VantagePoint user or maybe you're seeing VantagePoint for the first time, don't hesitate to type in the chat. Towards the end of the session, I'll ask for some ticker symbols so we can review those live together, and I'm really looking forward to that because that's really the funnest part of these live sessions here. We'll see what VantagePoint has to say about what was expected to happen today in the markets and potentially what's to come as well. So go ahead and let me know if this is your first time seeing VantagePoint. I'd love to know kind of who understands VantagePoint already and who might just be joining us for the very first time seeing this incredible technology here. So let me know in the chat, drop me a little, first time or maybe new to VantagePoint if you can in the chat session. That would be incredibly helpful. And of course, everything that we do here in VantagePoint on our live streams is going to be education based. So I'm not a licensed advisor, but I'll certainly be helping to educate you in different techniques and different technical analysis. So that way, whether you're using VantagePoint or not, you can have more confidence in the markets here. But our analysis will take place in our VantagePoint software. So let's go ahead and jump right on over there. All right. Perfect. Everyone should be able to see my VantagePoint screen. All right, perfect. Oh, great. All right, I see a lot of chats coming in now. Thank you. This is perfect. Thanks, Mark. Much appreciated. Hello, hello. All right, Ed, you too. Burl, thank you. Perfect. Okay. Now, let's go ahead and get started here. So I am going to do just a very brief review on how to utilize the VantagePoint software. Don't worry, it's quick, it's easy. That's the best part about artificial intelligence and incredible, innovative technology like we have here at VantagePoint is easy, accurate, and just so much information, but boiled all down into something very simple that anyone can use. So going ahead and jumping on into our charts. Now, of course, today our session is really going to be based on kind of, shielding yourself from some of the fundamental aspects that happen in the markets, whether it be tariffs or earnings, right? We have some earnings coming up here as well. So as we approach kind of the earnings season, we want to make sure that you can navigate through confidently some of these fundamental impacts that will, have an impact on the market, right? So let's go ahead and dive on in very quickly because you'll see how VantagePoint can help you navigate through that. So for everyone who is new to VantagePoint, just remember green and red, all right? So green is going to typically indicate an uptrend. Red would typically indicate a downtrend or bullishness for up, bearishness for down, just for everyone. So we're all on a level playing field. So really, we want confirmation. That's the key. So confirmation is going to be key to your confidence moving forward in any trade strategy, because once you start second guessing yourself, that's where things tend to go a little bit wrong. So how can you be confident in your trade decisions? Well, rely on technical analysis and more specifically the artificial intelligence that's built into the technical indicators here in VantagePoint. So if we take a look at our trend here, now I've got the cues pulled up because I think it's really important for everybody to understand how to really understand the current state of the markets, the current market conditions. Not just from somebody talking, on the news, but really backing that up with data, right? You want to verify that information, but also more than verify, have that information ahead of time so you can proactively plan your day. So let's walk through how to do that here. So if you take a look here on the cues, and I'm just going to use this as a great example here, you can see things taking place where on 4/23, this is back in April, guys, all right, we have this blue line crossing over the black line. And so when we see that blue line crossing over the black line here, that's going to indicate a green trend or bullishness for an uptrend. Now you'd want to, everybody say it with me, confirm, right? That confirmation, confirm that reading or that data point with a secondary point of confirmation. That secondary point is going to come from our neural index. So that neural index is actually this green sort of banner that runs lengthwise across the bottom of your screen. This neural index predicts price over the next 2 days. So we have a trend indicator right up here. We have our neural index down here on the bottom, or that price expectancy. And then we would come down and look at our third indication or our third piece of confirmation, which would be our predictive differences. Now, for those of you who might not know what predictive differences are, well, those are essentially strength indicators. So these are predictive indicators that will help you to better understand and anticipate the strength within a trend. All right. So not only are we getting a trend direction, but we're also assessing price as well as strength of that expected trend. All right. So lining those three up, very important for confirmation, but also very easy. So we're just looking down the road or down the line and just saying, check, check, check. Do we have confirmation? If so, great. You can make a confident trade decision. If not, okay, well then maybe the markets are a little dicey, right? Maybe that's where you need to shield yourself from some of the things that might happen in the markets, whether it be, a news announcement or tariff or a trade war or, something like that. So those things happen all the time. They're not going away. Fed announcements, right? Job claims. So there's so much in the markets that happens. How do you navigate through those scenarios? And as you can see, navigation then becomes very, very easy, almost like a predictive GPS here for your trade, because now we see that anytime that we have that green trend, that blue line above the black line, we're just going to remain in that trend all the way through until we get a crossover to the downside. Now, a crossover to the downside, we don't actually have that yet, right? So what does that tell you about the state of the current trend? Still bullishly optimistic, and I think that's the overall sentiment in the markets right now. It's sort of cautiously optimistic, even with some of the announcements that have come out about, trade wars and tariffs and, Fed minutes. And we've had a lot happen this week. We've had a lot in the news, but were the markets overreactive to that news, or were we able to navigate through that? And sure, we had a bit of consolidation happening and some impact here for about 2 days, but otherwise markets kind of brushed that off and picked things up pretty quickly to jump back into that current sentiment with our current bullish trend and reaching new highs again, right, with the cues today. So you guys, you can see here, very simple, very easy. And just real quick, if you're not sure how to use VantagePoint yet, because maybe this is the first time you're seeing it, you can also go to VantagePointForecast.com and we'll have additional information there. I know we'll drop a link in the chat for you guys as well throughout the session. So you can find more information there if you need more info on VantagePoint. So let's get back to our charts here. Let's take a look at the SPY today, right? So if we take a look at the SPY, I'm just going to jump on over to our chart here. We can see that we have a little bit different setup on our chart for the SPY, and that's because VantagePoint does allow you to customize based on individual time frames. So if you're a shorter term trader, you might use a shorter time frame, which would be our shorter term crossover, like our short term. Then of course we have the medium term, the long term, and our triple cross. These are all going to be, various time frames for you to really customize the chart based on how you trade. Now, VantagePoint's built for the swing trader, so short-term swing, typically, a day, maybe 3 days. The medium-term crossover, a little bit longer swing, going on down to our most conservative, which is our triple cross view. And that's in fact the view that we have on right now is this triple cross. Now, this view becomes very, very powerful because what we see are 3 separate independent predictive moving averages, right? Those are proprietary indicators here in VantagePoint, these predictive moving averages. This teal line, this medium color blue line, and then this darker blue line that runs across our screen. These indicators on the triple cross are going to work together, and that's the key, right? It's always easier when things work together, right? So when we see these predictive indicators all moving in the up direction and in congruence with each other, then we can see that triple cross turns to a green-like state. And in that green state, that would be a bullish sentiment here, giving us the confidence in this bullish trend, telling us that, yeah, all right, this trend has now started to generate some integrity. We're no longer in the beginning state of a trend. This trend is sort of stabilized, if you will, and confirmed that we are in that bullish state. And we can see we run all the way up through that trend here on the SPY. Now, of course, there's going to be areas of consolidation where we have sort of a reversion back down. But as long as that area never turns red, that's just areas of caution that you may want to better protect your positions. Maybe sort of be, in the sentiment or the thought of like risk on, right? So make sure that you're managing positions closely at that point because there is a higher risk. And that's the key. It's just understanding when you should look for additional risk and having that heads up ahead of time so you can proactively plan your trades according to those market conditions and according to the predictive data here. So you can also use that T-cross long level as a level of support and resistance here. If you notice that darker long line, that T-cross long, is acting as a level of support in an uptrend. So you can see as we do have some reversions, we hit that level several times before bouncing on up and continuing into our bullish trend. So that can also help you to set profit targets. Maybe like a short-term move to the downside. That's okay, right? When you see that movement there or the potential reversion, then you could certainly, I'm going to switch over to the short-term crossover now, guys, because I mentioned the several different time frames, right? So we have a crossover here, confirm with that neural index, and then our predictive differences are all trending to the downside here. So then using maybe that T-cross long as potential profit target in that shorter term scenario. So a little different setup here, but again, each trader is, as unique as themselves. Your trade strategies are always, yours and yours alone. That's why we're not here to tell you what to trade, but just simply to give you better information in advance so you can plan your trades better and more confidently. So taking a look at the SPY, I think we can all see here that we do have some bullish sentiment still continuing. If we look, we can see our trend is bullish, our neural index is bullish. A little bit of consolidation here on the predictive differences, but nothing trending, in the bearish direction very steeply. So we had a lot of confidence potentially in today. Keep in mind, guys, this information was here at 6:30 last night. All right. So if you want to navigate through the markets ahead of time, great way to do that is to look at the software the night before so you can get those forecasts and plan your trade day ahead. Or maybe look at it in the morning before a market open, whatever works best for you. But either way, you have it before market open so you can anticipate those moves earlier. So if we take a look at, our momentum indicators, we can also see momentum on the side. We'll dive a little deeper into momentum, I think, today as well. Let me ask, who uses momentum in their trades, and kind of what momentum indicators do you use in your trade strategies? So let me know in the chat. And Perfect. All right. I'm just reading through some of the chats, guys. I try to keep an eye on it down here. Great. All right. Yes. Okay. We can definitely jump into more detail into the predictive differences as well. Those are really important, especially when you're entering into a trend. So we've done our market assessment, right? But now understanding what the major areas of the markets are doing is something that's, integral to any trade strategy, really, or at least it should be. So if you're not doing a market assessment, here's my, PSA for everybody, make sure you're understanding those market conditions before you're jumping into the markets for the day, because understanding the current climate can really help you to anticipate some either troubles ahead or whether or not we have, clear skies and sun. So let's jump into some sector assessment, because I feel like when it comes to the markets, a lot of traders don't understand the fact that there is also a sector rotation that happens in the markets. And so when sector rotation happens, we have basically money flowing into and out of trends throughout the course of the year, right? Some markets and some sectors are more seasonal than others. And amid sort of the concerns right now with the trades and upcoming earnings and things like that, where can we expect the largest movement in the market? So how do we stack the odds by identifying the different areas of the market? So one way to do that is to look at what we would call a sector scan, if you will. So I'm just simply going to open up Intelliscan. And I've actually already got a sector scan saved, so it really can be that easy. I'm just going to go ahead and open that for us here. Now, as you can see, we do have a scanner in the software. So this is just kind of a little preview into how to utilize the Intelliscan in the software. So our scanner is called Intelliscan. So anytime you hear me say Intelliscan, it's going to reference the scanner that is already incorporated into the software. And this is a really, really important piece of VantagePoint, because this can help you identify trends, identify potential opportunities based off of the predictive data. So no longer do you have to, sort through thousands of different charts. You can actually use the scanning tool to do that. So another great way to utilize the scanning tool is to assess the sectors. And we can do that very, very quickly. So we can see where our crossovers, remember the crossovers here, and just to do a quick review, the crossovers are the crossovers down here on the chart. All right. So if those are up, they're going to be in green. If they're down, they're going to be in red. So remember, I told you, remember green and red, because those are going to be very easy tools to use in VantagePoint. Who doesn't love a good color coding system, right? But just in case you don't like color coding things, then of course we have up and down as well. So if you're looking for markets that are on the move, areas of the market where there's just money flowing into those areas, especially, like I said, right now, what areas of the market are moving? What areas should you avoid, right? And that's a huge piece that, I find a lot of traders miss sometimes is, okay, where do I want to be? Yes, but where also do I need to avoid and maybe manage positions better in that area if you do have positions in that market area. For example, right? Consumer discretionary, right? We see across the board, and this is how I look at the Intelliscan, is just across the board. Do we have agreement amongst our indicators? Now, all of these indicators that are in the scan right now, that are right here, are the indicators we looked at on our chart, right? Our crossover, our neural index, and our predictive differences. Here's our crossovers, here's our neural index, here's our predictive differences. And so using that level of assessment, we can take a look and see, all right, what's up, what's down. You could even sort by them. You could look for the down sectors. You could look for the up sectors, right? So if we select that up sector, we can see that across the board, where do we have all things pointing up, right? Agreement, confirmation. We're basically fact checking right now, right? So industrials is a great area of the market right now that has had some really great movement in that area. Overall, it's been outperforming, right? So why not sort of hedge your bets in an area that's done really well historically and is expected to continue in that direction rather than sort of flying at it blind, right? So if we take a look at, and I see your guys' indications on the momentum indicator, so we'll absolutely take a look at some of those as well. Thank you guys for your feedback there. So if we take a look, coming back to our sectors, take a look to see, all right, what areas of the market do we see are really moving in this direction right now? And where are sort of the odds stacked in our favor? What's up across the board? So we can just come down and take a look. Growth assets, right? Growth assets really tend to back up the fact that we're really, in sort of a healthy market at this point, with a bullish trader sentiment. When growth stocks are up, there's certain, specific sectors in the market that are going to move, when we have stability, and others when there's market instability or, some fear in the markets, that will tend to be sort of safe haven assets. And some of those safe haven assets are things like utilities, and consumer staples, right? So things that everybody has to have. And so in other times when markets are good, we see things like growth assets or consumer discretionary markets really moving in a pretty significant way. And so this is a great way to come through and just take a look and see, all right, what sectors are moving? What sectors do we need to avoid to kind of avoid some of that heartache, if you will, right? So if we come down and take a look at some of these additional sectors, so let me ask you, I'll pull up some stocks within these sectors as well here momentarily, but let me ask you, what are sort of some of your favorite sectors in the market? I'm curious to see, because I know sometimes based on what job you have, you might prefer a certain area of the market. Some people really like tech, others really like financials, or maybe you don't understand market rotation or sectors. And this is, great education for you then as well. But sectors are really just a breakdown of the market. So tell me what sectors you tend to gravitate towards. Now I'm gonna keep an eye on the chat as we go through. All right, so lots of momentum indicators here. RSI, MACD, TSI. Very good. All right, you guys are taking them off my chart here. I like it. All right, so let's take a look at some of these sectors. Let's just go to, industrials. I know, like I said, industrials have really been, moving pretty quickly. So, all right, well, materials open, but that's okay. That's perfect, because materials is also another sector that's been doing very well lately. We can see those kind of up across the board. But if we take a look at our industrials, and I'm just going to hide that Intelliscan for just a moment. So I just pushed it to the background, allowing more room for our charts and analysis here. So let's take a look and see where we're at current day. You can see what our trend was doing previously, where we did have our bullish crossover with confirmation coming back here. We also have additional confirmation here of that continued trend, where we see our bullish expectation with our predictive differences moving up, and the neural index is green as well. Here's another really great start to the trend as well. And we can see that not only does VantagePoint help you to find, nice moves in a trend, but also can help you to avoid some sort of marginal movement as well. Because unless you like, sort of delta neutral spreads, for all of my options fans out there, avoiding something like this might be, something that some traders would like to avoid, right? Because really there's no movement. And when you are trading the underlying asset, you really do want some movement there. Like I said, unless you have a specific strategy for a consolidated market, you may want to avoid some of those areas. And you can see right here that our strength indicators throughout this entire set through here, right, actually helped you to navigate through that, saying, hang on, there's not a whole lot of strength here. So before you really look in this area, be very cautious because there's not a lot of movement in that market right now. And so navigating through some of those scenarios can be incredibly helpful. So your capital's not tied up in these assets where you're just kind of waiting to see, should I stay, should I go, what's happening here. You can see very clearly what's expected to happen. And through that area, we had some consolidation. Nothing wrong with that. Just knowing and navigating through can be really helpful. So where do we start to get some significant movement here? I'm just going to pull this up a little closer so we can see that our predictive differences start to trend up right here where we get our crossover. So we have a crossover, our bullish neural index, check there, right? And then of course the predictive differences all trending up as well. Somebody had asked about the order of the predictive differences. At the start of a trend for, more consistency and stability, you would typically want them to really be in order from most sensitive to more conservative, right? That most sensitive indicator, that short-term predictive difference moving first, and then followed by the medium and the long. But that's going to be up to the individual trader as well. The most important piece is that they're all moving in the same direction, helping to confirm those points of confirmation that we talked about earlier. So again, confirmation is key here. Here we have our crossover to the upside, our neural index is bullish, and the predictive differences have started to generate some bullish strength here, or some renewed bullish strength. So this is the first point in several weeks where we really have full confirmation here, indicating the potential for this trend to now shift from consolidated to bullishness. And catching these shifts ahead of time is what is key for many trade strategies. Just about every trade strategy. If you know something's going to happen ahead of time, or you're very confident that it will, a couple of days can make a big difference. So navigating through that, then let's go to current day so we can see where we're at. And of course, we do see that we are in that bullish state, our bullish continuation here, because our trend is still continuing and remaining bullish, and our neural index is bullish, and our predictive differences are still up above that zero line. In fact, we have some renewed bullishness coming in from that short-term predictive difference down here, right? So now what markets or what equities or what individual stocks might you have more confidence in trading? Maybe something in industrials. One asset that is kind of one of the big industrials is Caterpillar, right? So that's going to cover in, capital goods, and also cover some of the energies as well. But CAT is one that has been up and has continued to go up. So not only are we seeing where is the money moving right now in the overall markets, but then we're taking that information and allowing it to trickle down to the individual assets to find other markets that are moving with that sector, with the money flow. And if you've traded for any length of time, you know that it's much easier to trade with the markets than it is against it, right? Can you? Sure, absolutely. Don't get me wrong. There's always some possibility of some counter trend trades, but it's always easier to go with the flow of something than it is to try to paddle against it. At least it's, more gain for less work, right? Typically. So as we can see here with Caterpillar, are we continuing to move in that bullish direction? And we can see these trends are actually fairly similar. We could even put these side by side here. Yes, you can do sort of a comparison here, and I'll just make these as very, similar as possible so you guys can see how the sectors and the markets within those sectors really do tend to move together. So again, identifying the moving sectors and then identifying the individual assets. This is a great way to navigate through the volatility that some of these fundamentals can cause. So, rather than just kind of hoping that when there's a news announcement that maybe some of those safe haven assets will kind of harbor you, if you will, or protect you, use the data, because some traders might have felt that recently, but as we saw, the markets didn't react as volatilely as we expected them to with some of the tariff announcements and with the Fed minutes and things like that coming out. And typically when we have so much happening, the markets get a little unstable. But navigating through using the predictive indicators, using the sector rotation as well as the individual charts and assets, you can see easy to navigate through here. So nice little compare and contrast. We can see that these, again, move very similar to each other. And so, not only looking at that, but, what are some other sectors that we're also moving? We can take a look at some other sectors as well. Let's just open up this scan here. I'm just going to pin it to our page and drag that down so we can see a little bit bigger detail here. Again, growth assets. Growth stocks, when those are going up, it typically, again, tends to relay the message that the markets are kind of buoyed right now and really continuing in this, cautiously optimistic bullish movement, right? We've got a lot of confidence in the markets right now rather than fear. And so with the growth assets heading up as well as industrials and things of that nature, if things were to shift, we would typically see money movement into other sectors, like as I mentioned before, things like the consumer staples, things that people have to buy, right? Gold is another one that tend to be those safe haven assets. So since we're not seeing that right now, and we're seeing continued strength in the markets, and I mean, guys, the markets are, they're doing what they're doing, right? So it's VantagePoint's just calling it ahead of time so you can better position yourself, better prepare yourself to be on the right side of that movement and in the right area of the market as well. So, things like aerospace and defense, biotech, right? We've seen pharmaceuticals really just kind of taking off here recently. So biotech is another huge area of the market that's kind of critically underlooked, I think, sometimes. And taking a look at our other areas also, again, gold, as I mentioned here, down across the board. So getting our data from the scan as well as then looking down at the charts themselves. So we could even take a look at gold. Let's just take a look at GLD. In fact, I already had it up, so I'll just close out of this here. I have that as part of my market assessment. So that way I know we're always checking that market assessment. So we can see gold in a downtrend right now, right? So if we see gold really having some weakness here, we may want to be very cautious, very careful. Now, we did see that we had on the shorter term expectation, guys. Now, this is what's important, is that just because we're seeing that downtrend doesn't necessarily mean that we won't have an up day. Now, this is one indicator I haven't talked about yet, so I'm going to zoom in a little closer. See our predictive trade candle here? So that gray trade candle is telling you that we are expecting a higher high in gold today and a higher low. That's because it's shaded green on both ends. Green and red. It's a theme here, right? So if you notice, we have that bullish trade candle, green on one end, green on the other. But we're in the midst of a bearish movement, and we've seen that here over the last week. Now, a bearish swing, right? So this is where having that confidence takes place. Do you want to trade in something where you're 50-50, or do you want to trade it in an area where you know that there's good movement in that market and you're really selecting the most ideal opportunities for your trade strategy, right? So understanding and kind of selecting the best opportunities is also where VantagePoint really helps you to pinpoint those areas of the market where you can have most confidence right now. So, taking a look at industrials or even materials here as well with, so many things happening in the materials area of the market with, basic materials and things of that nature. And we do have stock sectors for that as well. So if you open up your stocks, you'll be able to see basic materials right there. Those are the different areas of the market. So these sectors are going to line up with the various areas in the market. And I'll just open those up for everybody. You've got things like 5G, communications, technology, basic materials, right? That's going to follow majorly the XLB, the materials spider as well. So lots of different ways to track this movement and really capitalize on the different areas of the market. So let's see. I know that we had a couple of ticker symbols here that were requested. You know, if you could do me a favor, that's a little bit further up in the chat. I know I saw some earlier, so do me a favor, go ahead and drop some of those ticker symbols in the chat for me now so I can start pulling those up. I said we would kind of take the last half, maybe the sectors that you guys want to review as well. Happy to take a look at those live here in the software. This is kind of the fun part where I get to hear from you guys in the session and review what you want to look for. So here was one from earlier. I'll go ahead and pull this up. This is actually right in that industrial sector as well. And we can see we had a nice bullish crossover here to the upside on 626. All right. Anybody want to catch that move, right? Who'd be okay with something like that, right? So let's see what VantagePoint said. Let's see if we have confirmation together. So we have a bullish crossover here on 626. Then we see our bullish neural index. So we've got green on top of green. And then do we confirm with those predictive differences? And we can see our predictive differences are all trending up. And for you, Mark, those are in the right order as well. So we can see that we do have that confirmation here. Now, at this point, we would have also wanted to take a look at that predictive trade candle. That's going to give us the predictive trade range for the day. All right, so looking at that expected high and that expected low can also help you to plan and assess from a risk standpoint if you ever need help setting stops. This is a great strategic way to do that based on predictive price data rather than just kind of hoping that you set it at a decent level, right? So who uses stops? Tell me in the chat if you're using stop losses, because if so, I'll dive a little deeper into that predictive trade candle for you guys too. So if we see we have that crossover here, full confirmation, and then we would have looked at that predictive trade candle to confirm as our fourth point of confirmation. Now, you may also have wanted to look at some potential for, resistance. Did you have enough room to run for resistance? And we do have those indicators here as well. But navigating through that trend here, we start to experience some potential weakness here in HON. And we see that predictive trade candle coming down. We see the predictive neural index, and we also see the predictive differences coming down as well. Now, this for you as a trader might signal, okay, this is where things get a little dicey. Maybe you're setting nice tight stops at that point. Either way, you know that there's increased risk. And when there's increased risk, this is where you do want to be overly cautious. It's okay to protect your profits, right? Who wants to give all the money back to the markets? You just worked for free on that trade, right? We definitely don't want to do that. So protect yourself, protect your profits, and make sure that you have good risk management, especially when you start to see those predictive indicators showing some weakness within the trend. Now, I'm going to go ahead and toss this on over to our short-term crossover here. Navigating through this trend, we can see we, in fact, do have a short-term crossover to the downside. So if we take a look at that short-term crossover, boom, it's already shifted to a bearish trend. All right, now we're going to reverse our 4 points of confirmation. And so we can see we have a trend to the downside. We've also got a bearish neural index, and we've got predictive differences that are also bearish as well. So what does that tell us, right? Well, that tells you that this trend is likely in some sort of shift, and you should be very cautious at that point. So if we take a look to see where that was for the day, let's just, you know what? I'm going to do the shortcut way and just hit that little web search button, do a quick search on HON, and we can see the range for HON today was 236 to 239, and so we ended, so 236 to 239. Perfect. Well, guess what our predictive trade range was, right? 236 to 238. So it actually went a little higher today. It looks like it ended down towards the lower range of that predictive trade candle, but guess what, guys? That's what we were expecting, right? So we were expecting that to come on down and hit a low right in that. You can see the low right here, guys. Let me circle it for you so you can see what I'm looking at. 236.32. And guess what our range was for today? 236.53. I don't know how much closer we could get, right? Is nothing's 100% accurate in the markets, but when you can get within, a couple cents, it's definitely the accuracy is just amazes me every single time. But look at that. The market did exactly what VantagePoint told it to do. I'm just kidding, of course. It's just the power of predictive data, right? Analyzing these patterns, analyzing the intermarket analysis that happens behind the scenes. And so if you're not familiar with intermarket analysis, you can actually take a look at the market details. So take a look at what goes into the predictive analysis for these indicators. So if we go to Honeywell, we can see exactly where this market lands as far as where, what exchange it's on, and where it lies as far as a sector, conglomerates, which is also going to be industrials as well. And so you can see here also that you have this intermarket analysis that's going on behind the scenes. And when we see this complex web of markets that go into the analysis and the predictive data in Honeywell, it can be just like really overwhelming at first. But good news is we don't have to do any of this, right? These are all the various sectors that go into the analysis for Honeywell. These are the markets and the areas of the markets that are really pushing and pulling and driving the price of Honeywell in this particular case. Now, you could do this on any individual asset, but it's pretty amazing to see that by analyzing other markets, other areas that are going to impact this market, we can see the forecast 1, 2, and 3 days in advance to an incredible degree of accuracy, just like we saw in that predictive trade range for the day. So, all right, let's take a look here. Thank you, CJ, much appreciated. All right, let me just start pulling up some other ones. Thanks for retyping some of these in for me. Sometimes it's hard to go back in the chat here. Maybe I'm getting a... Sorry, my fingers were not typing, right? So let's open. CMP is one. Yeah, Roblox, of course. Roblox has been on a pretty significant trend. I think we analyzed that one on one of our previous sessions as one of the bigger movers. And, of course, market did exactly what VantagePoint said it was going to do, right? I love when that happens. It happens more often than not. So, all right. So let's take a look starting at CMP, and I'll pull up more as you guys type them in. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thanks, guys. In fact, I see them coming in now, so I'm just going to pull up as many as I can. Let's get the first couple ones. SLV, you got it. You can see some of these are going to be ETFs. Some of these are, individual stocks. These are just ticker symbols you guys are typing into the chat. So we'll do some live analysis right here. All right. So jumping back to CMP, let's start here and then we'll take it from there. Now, again, this is where we see VantagePoint really showcasing its incredible. Oh, keep them coming, guys. I'll take a look at the chat as we go through. I'm keeping an eye on that, by the way. So as we can see, CMP still in a bullish expectation. Now here you can see that the trade candle, and we just touched on this, so I'm going to zoom in a little closer. You can see the predictive trade candle is actually green on the bottom and red on top. This is expecting a higher low, but a lower high. All right, so that's basically telling you there's some potential for some consolidation here. We would typically want to be, pretty cautious. Let's take a look and see where CMP was. We've got a bullish trend still expected, but we do have a neural index. So maybe a little bit of caution there. We can see that the trend had already crossed over with our predictive differences coming up right around here. If we back that out so you guys can see, it might be zoomed in a little too close. There we go. So we had our crossover with some significant movement on the predictive differences started here where we had that crossover and then riding on up that trend from there. So you could also take a look at your momentum at that point as well. So let's take a look at some of those momentum indicators that we talked about to see where those were for the day. I'm going to go ahead and open up the ones that you guys had put in the chat. So we had MACD, stochastics, TSI, and RSI were the main ones that those of you who entered into the chat had requested. So again, looking at momentum, do we have confirmation here? And this is, again, predictive momentum, guys. Anytime you see that little blue dot, that's going to be predictive. All right. So predictive data is what we do here at VantagePoint. So if we can put predictive data in an indicator and sort of supercharge it, we're going to do that. Right? So these indicators, you've got a MACD, a stochastics, a TSI, and RSI that are not just your traditional indications. They're actually supercharged by that artificial intelligence, by the predictive data here in VantagePoint that goes into evaluating all of those markets we just looked at. And for the individual assets as well. So our range on CMP today was, let's see, 2184 to 2257. Wow. So we hit the low right to the penny, right? So I don't know how much closer we could have gotten. Overall, this market was up for the day, right within the predicted range here, with a slightly higher high at 2257 instead of 2218. So we did see a slightly higher high than expected, which, you know, in a bullish trend, that's okay. You know, we are expecting, you know, when things do better than you expect, then okay, you know, that's fine, right? We'll take a little extra. So again, kind of navigating through this trend here. Do we have a crossover with those predictive differences? Yes, we do. Then we can, of course, see our stochastics. For those of you who aren't familiar with some of these momentum indicators, you know, we do provide training on these indicators if you choose to, you know, add them on in your VantagePoint software, because it's important for you to understand how to utilize the momentum indicators, utilize the predictive indicators, utilize the 4 points of confirmation that we've been touching on. It's fairly simple, but we also back that up with some really, really great training. So, you know, as the VantagePoint University, our university here, the you know, head instructor or head trainer, you know, education is what we do. It's what we live and breathe every single day here in the software. So as you can see, of course, you know, our momentum indicators are shifting to the upside. You know, for those of you who are familiar with those momentum indicators, you can see we do have bullish indications at that time, helping to give us additional confidence. And then moving on, we have our bit more conservative momentum indicator crossing over the next day to a bullish trend, helping to give more confidence and, you know, boost your confidence in that position as well, including your MACD and your true strength index, which is the TSI indicator as well. So our earlier indications giving us a signal a little earlier than our more conservative momentum indicators. And when coupled together, once you can see that progression, you can create a sort of really nice trade plan for yourself that allows you to follow that progression, giving you a lot of confidence to actually strategize around the market trends rather than just kind of getting in and hoping it goes in your favor. So looking at momentum is a really, really key piece to that as well. So let's move on to another. I'm just going to pull up the Roadblocks that someone had requested. I can't remember who it was, so I'm sorry. I had quite a few come in after that as well, but either way, thank you for the request. So as you can see, wow, this Roblox has just been on a tear lately. So I love to see when VantagePoint catches these trends incredibly earlier and just helps you navigate through them with so much ease, right? So if you see 414, we had a crossover. Now keep in mind, this is in the midst of all of that market volatility with the initial tariff announcements where, you know, the markets were really overreacting to things. And so, you know, many might during that time have a fear and kind of stay away from the markets. But if you have something that can help guide you through this, there's, you know, no sense in that, right? Why miss out on a good opportunity if you've got confidence in it? So again, looking for that neural index, our predictive differences trending up as well. We had a nice confirmation here. Then riding this trend up as long as that blue line stayed above the black. Now a little bit of volatility here, possibly considering an exit at that point. Now that trend lasted from crossover to crossover itself. That trend lasted from 414 to 7-1. So for a longer swing, right? And let's just say, again, I don't know exactly where you would get in if you chose to take this and maybe out here on that day, but that's an 81.09% move. So, let's just call it 81%. I mean, in 54 days, who doesn't want those, right? And the greatest thing about this is that you navigated through that so easily. That blue line never crossed over the black line. If you just went crossover to crossover where we had our points of confirmation, watch here. Crossover, neural index, predictive difference, right? Crossover, neural index, predictive difference. Of course, confirm that with the predictive trade candle as well, but oh man, so easy, so accurate, and so much confidence there in these trends. And then of course, that's looking back to see where that was, but we were looking at this the other day to navigate through this trend. And if you had been in for that long, maybe you switched over to the triple cross as well. So in this case, we did see that there was a little bit of consolidation, some areas of where you should slightly be cautious, right? But man, look, I mentioned this earlier, right? You can see it. Sorry, I get so excited about this stuff. You guys can see right here, price came down and hit that T-cross long level. What did we say earlier? We agreed that that was going to be sort of this level of very dynamic support in an uptrend. Well, we're in an uptrend, right? And what did that T-cross long provide? That level of very dynamic support happening there. And so we see price drawed back to the mean, right? Drawed back to this level of support, failed to break below it, which indicates that we have the potential for continuation as well. And it does continue, to move up as well. So just kind of taking a look at these chats. No, it would not. Okay, so I'll take a look at that in a second. Are you referencing the predictive trade candle, the predictive range? That's not going to tell you where it's going to start and where it's going to end. It's telling you where it might fluctuate for the day. So it's going to give you just the high, the low, and that midpoint. But, if things open up towards the lower range of the trade candle, right? If that trade setup is there and you enter in the lower range of the trade candle, the likelihood of continuing on up would then be higher. So you can use that to then strategize your entries, potentially even your exits as well. So that predictive trade candle, even for very short-term traders, we do have traders that, utilize that predictive trade candle for a day trade setup. And it works incredibly well, as you can see the accuracy on some of these assets. I mean, you guys are asking for them. So I'm just pulling them up and checking the range for today. And like I said, it's to the penny, right? So just amazing every single time. So Roblox down slightly for today, but right near that predictive range, right? Our range, our P low was, let's see, 105.50. So slightly below today. So we did have some, sort of areas of caution. Let's take a look at the support and resistance, because I think this is really important to take a look at, because you'll notice, and I've just gone ahead and put some zones of support and resistance on the chart. So this is also great because looking back over even several years, if I back this out, we can really see those levels of support and resistance. Those are going to be the red and green sort of dotted lines here on the chart. I'm going to move this out of the way. This is just incredible trend that we had happen here. And we can see that's happened more than once on this asset too. So if you want to be able to identify opportunities like that and aren't utilizing the predictive data just yet, just go to that VantagePointForecast.com. We'd be happy to give you some more information on how we can help you. So if we take a look at these levels of support and resistance. Again, support in green, resistance in red. These are those dotted lines. And of course, the point that they were established is going to be denoted by that red or green arrow. So, it would take, I don't even want to know how long it would take to plot these support and resistance lines on a chart if you're doing this on your own. Who trades using support and resistance? I'm going to zoom back in so we can analyze the current support and resistance levels as well. All right, tell me in the chat if you can, okay? So as you can see, we're at resistance. What does resistance do? Sort of kind of quick pop quiz if you can. What impact does resistance typically have on price, right? Tell me in the chat if you know, and hint, hint, the arrows will help you if you're not sure, right? Okay, so good. Most of you are getting this right. So as you can see, the resistance is typically going to have a downward pressure on price. So when we see price approaching levels of resistance, especially resistance that we haven't really been able to break through yet, then that is going to give you a heads up that this price point where this arrow is actually a very strong level. So it almost acts as a ceiling for price. And so we can see that we hit this resistance level right back here. Now guys, this was on what date? Let's check. I'll use my crosshairs here. 6:30. So we hit that resistance and established that resistance level on the 30th of June. Okay. Now, as we sort of resumed our trend, we came down and bounced off of our support level, which we also saw with that triple cross, that T cross long. But we bounced then off of that level and came up to retest that previous resistance level that was established on June 30th. All right. So when we see that retest of resistance, we're on the lookout. We're very, very cautious at this point because we know that resistance can have that downward impact on price. So we would be watching for two, yes, count them, two consecutive, that means 2 days in a row, closes above that level. So the question is, were we able to close and officially break that resistance level? And the answer is no. Why do I say that? Well, because do we have two consecutive closes? You can answer that for yourself right here. We have one close above resistance, but the next day, boom, we come down and we actually close below that dotted line right here. That's going to tell us that that resistance level is very strong. All right, so the next time we come up to retest that resistance, like what happened today, we would be even more cautious because we've already seen a failure off of that level. With that extreme pressure on price, you would want to be very cautious there. All right. So if you did take that entry, right, then maybe you're really assessing that from a very cautious standpoint, or maybe you're setting, tighter stops as well at that level if you're already in that position. Because as we saw, I mean, you could have entered that position, many times over at that point throughout this trend. So utilizing the support and resistance will also help you to navigate through your risk assessment. So not only are you looking at profit potential here with the trend, but you're also assessing for that risk component as well, which is so vital to really kind of taking your trading to the next level, right? Everybody wants to make money in the markets, but how do you keep it? That's the question, right? So, VantagePoint can help you find the opportunities and help you navigate through some of those significant trend shifts as well. So taking a look at Amazon. All right, let's take a look at Amazon here. So we have kind of a mixed reading on Amazon as it comes through our VantagePoint software here. Now I say a mixed reading because remember, we're looking for confirmation. We're looking for things to be in alignment, in agreement. And when things are in agreement, they tend to move much more smoothly, right? Well, when there's some contention or some conflict, well, that's when you do want to be maybe a little bit more cautious in that trend. And so we can see that, yes, we do have a bullish indication on Amazon, of course, right? That's our trend right now. The neural index is green. Our predictive differences are slightly mixed, right? And I say that because if we pull this up, we can see the short terms coming up, the medium terms coming down, and the long is sideways. So it's truly a mixed indications from those strength indicators. And so again, being very cautious at this point because we are coming out of that upward trend right here. I'll switch over to our longer term indication. We can see we've been in that bullish trend for quite some time. Now, look at your predictive trade range. All right, so your trade range here is also giving you a higher high, but also a lower low from the day before. So let's just take a look and see where Amazon ended, and that ended at 222.26. And here we go, right there, kind of right in that mid range as well, 222.26, and the predictive mid range was 222.81, and let's see, the low 219.70, so not even, a dollar off here. And then on a $225 stock, guys, that's just incredible. Like I said, never ceases to amaze me, the accuracy here in VantagePoint. So, looking at some of these assets here today and assessing the accuracy here in VantagePoint, you can see how this is really going to help you navigate through confidently any scenario in the market, whether it's, trade wars or, inflation data, Fed minutes. The fundamentals impact the markets. It's how are you going to navigate through those conditions? And that's where technical analysis really shines brightest, is during those moments where there's instability and, you as a trader might be feeling some insecurities. Well, no need, right? Trade with confidence. Use predictive data to help you navigate through and proactively approach your trade so you can have confidence before the trade day even begins. So don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel so that way you get our news announcements. We have, various sessions throughout the weeks, and different resources on our YouTube channel. So check those out, like and subscribe, and visit VantagePointForecast.com if you need more information on our VantagePoint software. So have a great day, everybody. Thanks for joining us for the training session.